computer program that it was irrevocable, so it's kind of ominous thing. So that deadline was a month ago, and since then, you've begun to figure out who's, we called it push the button, and who hasn't. And it's been a really interesting time for conversations. It's turning out that there's two groups of people that seem to be leaving. It's the 20-somethings, and those that are close to 55 or over seem to be leaving mostly. And I've got a couple of 20-somethings that work for me or I'm associated with, and they're in finance. And one of them just said, you know, Jim, I don't know about this corporate life thing. This was his first job out of college. He's done well. He's got a couple of promotions. He goes, I'm actually thinking of going to the Peace Corps or doing something that seems a little bit more meaningful to me. And the other one, he's also in finance, and he's liking the corporate life, but he said, I don't know that I want to do finance. I'm thinking of doing, it's a huge corporation, so we have lots of officers that a lot of other corporations don't have, but there's one vice president of diversity and inclusion. And he said, I would really love to be in that space and really making a difference. And he's actually a gay man, and he's been very public about that and spoken up at a lot of presentations and has gotten a lot of great feedback from that. So I think he'd be good at it. Then there's a lot of us that are near retirement age that we've stuck it out for 20, 30 years. And I had lunch with a friend of mine the other day, and he said, you know, Jim, a couple of years ago, when I had to do my focused development plan, and you're supposed to put down what jobs you want next and what development things you need to get there and all this kind of stuff. He goes, I told my boss, I don't care if I ever get promoted again. I don't even care if I ever get a raise again. I'm just going to write down things that make me happy. And I'm like, well, okay then. You know, so it's just been one of those times that it was kind of unexpected, because you're going to have 850 people all leaving on May 4th. May the 4th be with you. but it's forced us to all have these really abrupt, soul-searching kind of conversations, especially those of us that have been there a long time. You know, we were chasing that American dream, and now we get to the end of it, and you're kind of like, well, is this really the dream I believe in? Which is what kind of, and this won't be the first time this is ever discussed in corporate life, it's just hitting me kind of hard all of a sudden. Which is how I found Courtney Martin and her TED Talk. Her TED Talk's titled The New American Dream, and it came out in 2016. She's a feminist author, a journalist, and Parker Palmer calls her a cultural critic, or a culture critic. So she's questioning the American dream because she, in her idea, our American dream somehow has turned into what shall I have? And so she talks about it in three different areas. She said, well, the first was job security. There was an expectation that you'd get that, land that job and be there for the rest of your life. There was that your income would always go up, and that you could go out and buy that big house with that white picket fence. So she proceeds to debunk all of these. She said job security has become a myth, and now I feel like I'm one of the last baby boom generations that actually found a company that happened, but less and less. I mean, even the pension fund is not set up for you to stay there anymore. And she said that by 2020, almost half of the workforce will be freelancers. Median per capita income, I think we've seen lots of press over this over the last few decades. The median per capita income has been decreasing. And then she said that big house with the white picket fence, she reminded us that in the last Great Recession, 5 million people lost their home ownership because of being, you know, the debt that they'd taken on that they couldn't be repaid. And pointed out that home ownership is actually at its lowest point since 1995. So it kind of confirmed a lot of the conversations we were having at work. It's not that we didn't get some of the American dream, but it might not be what we believed in. So she goes on, Martin goes on to say, instead of what shall we have, the question should be, how shall we work and how shall we live? She said the new American dream is about community, collaboration, and creativity, and she goes on to talk about that. But she stops abruptly in her talk and makes sure that everybody, that she's very clear she's not talking about the 14.8% of people living in poverty. And she stresses that the growing gap between the rich and the poor is, in her words, a profoundly immoral thing and needs to be urgently addressed. So her TED Talk is about the 85% that seem to be able to chase this so-called American dream. So she proclaims that, for example, we should stop asking children, what do you want to be when you grow up? And start asking them, well, how do you want to be when you grow up? That it's more important about how rather than what. And so she says, in her opinion, the answer is to look to your ancestors. So how shall you work? She said, we should work like our mothers. She said that ever since the feminist movement took hold, women have spent enormous energy, this, in her words, trying to fit into a work world built for men. Many have gone to great lengths to have meaningful careers while juggling to take care of all their loved ones. So the way she kind of summed it up, it's this patchwork of meaning and money with an enormous flexibility. And she says, you know, her mother just said, she called it just making it work. But if you go to some of the life coaches today, they'll call it a career portfolio. Which makes it sound so fancy. Now Martin goes on to quote the artist Anne Hamilton, whom I'm sorry I wasn't familiar with, so I had to look her up and see what she does. She does these large-scale multimedia kind of installations for, I call it almost performance art, because it like shows up and then eventually it has to dig it down. Well, the artist Anne Hamilton has said, labor is a way of knowing. Labor is a way of knowing. And in other words, what we work on is how we understand the world. And I'm quoting her here. If this is true, and I think it is, then women who have disproportionately cared for the little ones and the sick ones and the aging ones have disproportionately benefited from the most profound kind of knowing there is, knowing the human condition. So how do you connect your work with who you are? It's her question of how shall we live? And she talks about that we should live like our immigrant ancestors. And if you think about it, we've all heard those stories. You've either read them or experienced them firsthand from our ancestors. There was the multi-generational homes. There was collaborative survival tactics just to make sure that everybody made it. The shared meals. I think we've all heard that anecdotal story where it's soup every day and you just figure out how to make the soup stretch so that everybody had something to eat. Or shared childcare. If somebody had to go work, there was always somebody around to make sure the little ones were watched after. So this American dream that came up sort of after these immigrants arrived taught everyone to leave that village of self-care in pursuit of that big house with the white picket fence that ended up being a barrier to the village. The individualism it spawned left society now lonely and unhappy. So Martin goes on to describe her living situation. It's very unique. She lives in a co-housing community smack in the center of Oakland, California. So it's clearly an area that probably had some urban blight that was redeveloped for this project. And she said there's 25 people that she lives with. I think she's one of the 25. All different ages, all different political persuasions and professions. And they live in 9 housing units on 1.5 acres. And in her TED Talk, she kind of shows the pictures. And they're gorgeous housing units. And they're not like that row house kind of stuff or where they're all the same. They're all different, and it's the Bay Area. So they're all colored, brightly colored and that kind of thing. She says that they have solar panels. They're built as green as possible. And they all have solar panels on the roofs. So she said their electric bill is no more than $5 a month, typically. She said that they share industrial-sized kitchen and an eating area, and they have common meals twice a week. Now, when she tells people about this situation, she says she gets one of 2 reactions. They either love it, or they go, oh my God, how can you possibly survive in that kind of a situation? And she said that they have a sacred respect for privacy. It's the only way you're going to be able to make it work. And then she went on to say, they have every single person, or they have a commitment to radical hospitality. And she said, and I don't mean the kind of radical hospitality that the Four Seasons has in their ads. It's radical hospitality to each other. And this is her quote. Every single person is worthy of kindness. Full stop, end of sentence. Every single person is worthy of kindness. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? Sort of like our first principle, that the inherent worth and dignity of everyone kind of glommed up Nemo Patel's "Throw your heart up, let it fly high, let your love for all the world spread through the skies. Let it drop down, let it all go, spreading kindness to every living soul." Well, Martin closes her TED Talk by encouraging us not to follow a dream we might not believe in when we get there. Rather, live a life in which every single day the people you give your most energy to and your best love to aligns as closely as possible with what you believe in. So I sat and pondered that, and for me personally, here I am. I'm a minister now. So like 10 years ago, when my company first had this downsizing initiative and offered voluntary severance, I thought, you know what, this job, I'm kind of burnt out with it, it's not going anywhere, but what else could I do? And it was kind of the kick in the seat in the pants to go to seminary. At the same time, my seminary had decided to not have a residential program, so you could do it from where you were located. Like, everything fell into place. And so it was my personal effort to say, okay, it's going to come a time, and what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And what is it that I can do that's something that I really believe in? So here I am today. But I asked the question more about what does it mean for all of you personally, and then more specifically, what does it mean for this fellowship? If this is the new American dream, and we're called on to try to get a balance between making a living so you can eat and have housing and an adequate standard of living and have it be meaningful, where's the intersection for this fellowship? While you think about that, I found this poem that's kind of tangentially connected to what I wanted to say, but it's so cute I had to read it. It's called $3 Worth of God by Wilbur Reese. I would like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Not enough to explode my soul or disturb my sleep, but I just want enough to equal a cup of warm milk or a snooze in the sunshine. I don't want enough God to make me love my enemy or pick beats with a migrant. I want ecstasy, not transformation. I want warmth of the womb, not a new birth. I want a pound of the eternal in a paper sack. I'd like to buy $3 worth of God, please. So it spoke to me because I think we talk a lot about the dream of, I have 3 fellowships that I'm associated with that I serve: Fond du Lac, Stevens Point, and Green Bay. You're all different, you're all in a different place, different culture, but there's one commonality. We talk a lot about and dream a lot about a bigger and better fellowship. And so this hit home to me because I'm like, bigger and better. That's sounding an awful lot like the American dream to me. Is it a dream we really believe in, or is it just $3 worth of God? Our dream of bigger and better needs to be balanced with deeper and wider. It's about building community, building collaboration, not just our individual search for truth and meaning, which is important. But I think in Unitarian Universalism, we lift that up on the pedestal of the high altar and kind of think that that's it. It's about getting to really know humanity and grappling with humanness by getting proximate to those who aren't like us, to help, to be an advocate, and to serve. It's about much more than coming to a nice, warm place like this and listening to beautiful music and hopefully having an inspiring sermon to listen to on a Sunday morning. As Martin says, it's about giving our best energy and love to those who are here, and then together with those that are out there. I started thinking of some examples. As a minister, I'm beginning to think about all these buildings that we have that mostly sit empty most of the week, except for Sunday morning. And what could happen here that would help with this new phase of the American dream. For example, and I don't know if you do these things, I'm sorry, I'm part-time, so I don't know your history, and you can tell me all about it, and that'd be great. But things like swapping services, maybe child care or car care. I would swap anything for car care, believe me. People that are good at that, swapping service for something else, or meals, or are there social activism type of things that can happen here, or social activities on a Friday night, so young parents with kids can go on a date and know that their kids are having a good time doing something at the church. Those kinds of things that kind of harken back to the time when immigrants came and the church was sort of their center of their social fabric as well, and helped them support in their lives. Frankly, our mission is clear to me. Oh, I was going to stop and say one thing. Rather than have a congregational response right after the service today, because I really would like to hear what your ideas are on how this fellowship or how you are tying in with this different American dream, rather than having a congregational response right after the sermon, we're going to have a little bit of a let's celebrate, it's Celebration Sunday, and then come back up here, and anybody who'd like to join me to have a small group talk about it, I'd like to do it then. So our mission is clear to me. The dream we should seek brings balance to our world. And I'll repeat or paraphrase what we read earlier. We are instruments of peace. We sow love where there is hatred. We pardon when there is injury. We bring faith to those who have lost faith in life. We bring hope when there is despair. We bring light to the darkness. We bring joy where there's only sadness. This is a dream we can believe in. This is how we should live with each other here at our fellowship so that we can help bring balance to our world.